Ernie Haase has been a well-known and reliable figure in the gospel music industry for almost 30 years. His songs expressed faith, his voice brought hope, and his public persona remained composed, upbeat, and incredibly courteous. Fans saw him as a man whose life appeared to be as stable as the songs he sung. However, his private life was carefully shielded behind calm walls, while his career stayed firmly in the public eye. Little murmurs started to emerge over time. Nothing loud, nothing verified, just inquiries. His marriage, health, and the invisible strain of leading a life of ministry in front of millions of people were all questions. These rumors originated from a distance rather than from reality. Furthermore, distance frequently makes it possible for fantasy to develop more quickly than reality. The quiet only served to highlight the problem. Ernie Haase remained silent. His spouse remained silent. There were no interviews, no statements, and no revisions. Their choice to keep quiet seemed out of the ordinary at a time when public personalities frequently rushed to defend themselves. Some people were concerned about it, others were suspicious of it. At 61, something has changed, not out of rage, not due to coercion, but as a result of introspection. Ernie Haase's wife is finally prepared to give her perspective, not to feed rumors but to gently put them to rest, after years of prioritizing privacy above headlines. Her revelations are very human rather than frightening. We must first comprehend the life they created together behind closed doors, in order to comprehend why she remained silent for so long. The goal of Ernie Haase's gospel career was never to become famous. His emphasis was on message, meaning, and ministry from the start. His voice became well known for its warmth rather than for its strength. His clear, self-assured, and purposeful singing struck a profound chord with listeners of all ages. Ernie has a spotless and consistent reputation throughout his career. He stayed out of controversy, maintained his convictions, and refrained from discussing his personal hardships in public. Fans observed a man who had a humble demeanor, spoke sweetly, and smiled readily. He was seen by many as the epitome of a strong, tranquil, and dependable faith-based life. However, every public persona conceals a hidden reality. Even the most grounded people can gradually become weary of touring schedules, frequent travel, and the obligation to always appear strong. Ernie's true strength was frequently put to the test at quiet times, away from the cheers, while he stood on stage singing about faith. However, he never let those incidents define who he was in public. Comprehending Ernie Haase entails comprehending equilibrium. In addition to being a musician, he was a Christian, a spouse, and a man who handled responsibility with poise. His story was always about dedication more than perfection, and someone who had chosen a completely different role stood with him through it all. What's left is not scandal, not indignation, and not rumor when the noise gradually subsides and the headlines change. What's left is a subtle reality that hardly finds room in the fast-paced, harsh public world of today. There were never any dark secrets or dramatic breakdowns in the life of Ernie Haase and his wife. It was about how fast human lives can be reduced to conjecture when people feel entitled to answers they were never given, and how readily silence can be misinterpreted. Ernie Haase was a source of comfort and faith for audiences for many years. People dealing with doubt, sadness, and uncertainty found solace in his music. Beneath that unwavering presence, however, was a life molded by the same stresses that impact every long-term marriage. Time apart, emotional exhaustion, and the ongoing effort needed to maintain a relationship while living in the spotlight. These facts did not indicate failure. They were indicators of life. His wife's choice to speak up at last was an act of balance rather than defense. She didn't come forward to refute every falsehood or put an end to every critic. Rather, she opted to provide perspective. Furthermore, when presented calmly, perspective can be far more potent than argument. Her comments invited understanding rather than demanded it. By doing this, she served as a reminder that the truth need not be loud in order to be genuine. This incident also highlights a more fundamental problem in contemporary culture: the idea that public personalities should share their personal hardships with the world. Silence is frequently viewed as guilt and privacy as avoidance in the digital era, which is characterized by frequent updates and quick responses. However, this presumption overlooks a straightforward fact. Not every phase of a person's life is intended to be discussed, clarified, or evaluated by strangers. There was no proof to support the rumors that surrounded this story. They started out far away. Distance fosters unbridled creativity. particularly when social media sites that prioritize emotion over accuracy are involved. Once a story attracts attention, its veracity is frequently less important than how captivating it is. That's when damage subtly starts. The reaction, or rather the absence of reaction, was what set this scenario apart. Ernie Haase and his wife opted for moderation rather than feeding the cycle. While some were perplexed and irritated by the restraint, it also retained a unique quality, dignity. Making the decision to remain composed is a sign of strength in a society where anger is valued highly. The exposed reality was neither flawless or polished. It did not show an idealized life of faith or a perfect marriage. Rather, it provided something much more relatable, a collaboration that withstood pressure, change, and miscommunication without making its personal struggles public. Her voice resonated because of her candor and lack of theatrics. This narrative also raises questions about how society views women who want to be in the background rather than the spotlight. Because she was unimportant, Ernie Haase's wife was not invisible. She chose a different sort of presence, one based on support rather than recognition, which is why she was invisible. However, others projected assumptions onto her absence, demonstrating how readily quiet power may be misinterpreted as weakness. This also teaches us about influence and leadership. Public figures' words are powerful, but so is the silence of individuals who choose not to participate. Both influence stories, both have an impact on perception. The aim is what makes the difference. Speech that is intended to provoke causes division. Silence establishes boundaries when it is utilized as a protective measure. In a time where response frequently takes the place of reflection, it is crucial to recognize that distinction. In this tale, faith also has a minor but significant role. Not the outward manifestation of religion, but the perseverance it demands on a personal level. Hardship is reframed by faith, not eliminated. When it feels easy to react, it teaches patience. When pride demands an answer, it promotes humility. Faith served as a guide through rumors, rather than a barrier for Ernie Haase and his spouse. Something significant was revealed by the public's response to her statement. Many were seeking clarity rather than drama. The severity decreased after it was administered. This demonstrates how anger frequently thrives on ambiguity. The fuel that sustains conjecture is eliminated when the truth gently enters the debate. However, not everyone agreed with the explanation, which is a fact of public life. It is not a guarantee of agreement to speak the truth. It just takes back control of the story. And regardless of what other people think, once ownership is recovered, it provides tranquility. Additionally, this moment ought to prompt viewers to consider how they contribute to the dissemination of false information. A story's life is enriched by each click, share, and remark. Making the decision to stop, check, and think is now a duty rather than an option. Being media literate is more than simply a talent. It's a way to show respect for the actual people who go by public names. This was never fundamentally a tale of rumors. It was a tale of moderation in an era of extravagance, about prioritizing depth over show, about realizing that strength isn't always obvious. It occasionally waits in silence until it is actually required. Ernie Haase's legacy is still characterized by consistency rather than controversy as he moves forward. When his wife's voice was eventually heard, history was completed rather than altered. Collectively, they served as a reminder that intentional lives don't always require justification. Choosing privacy does not equate to concealment in a society that expects constant access. It is respect for oneself. Avoiding is not the same as choosing calm. It's knowledge. And it still takes bravery to choose the truth, even if it takes some time. This tale conveys a straightforward yet profound lesson. Not every quiet moment conceals a problem. Occasionally, it conceals something holy, and perhaps the most crucial lesson of all is to learn to appreciate that. Behind the quiet strength, the woman, the wife of Ernie Haase, never looked for attention. She took the decision to stay out of the spotlight right away. She opted for privacy when many public celebrities' partners prefer visibility. She preferred tranquility above recognition, not because she had anything to conceal. Interviews and public appearances did not define her role. Rather, it was characterized by emotional fortitude, tolerance, and support. When schedules shifted, travel became taxing, and expectations seemed burdensome. She was the one who provided consistency. Ernie's courage was silent at home, even though her voice was heard by people all around the world. As time went on, people became aware of her absence from the public eye and started making assumptions to fill the void. Some people confused distance with seclusion. Some mistook silent support for weakness. In actuality, though, her quiet was deliberate. Certain aspects of life, in her opinion, are sacrosanct and don't require explanation. She performed this position without complaint for years. She believed that truth did not always need to be defended, even when it was painful to watch stories develop online. Silence, however, is powerful, and it gets more difficult to bear that weight by yourself over time. Behind the praise, rumors start to circulate. The rumors did not begin with much fanfare. They never do. They started off as minor remarks on social media, discreet inquiries in fan communities, and minute alterations that some believed they saw. This was a squandered opportunity. A more succinct answer there: imagination gradually filled in the blanks. The marriage was questioned by some. Some were concerned about their mental or physical well-being. Even though there was no evidence to support any of these tales, viewers from a distance found them to seem plausible due to their repetition. The reality was straightforward. Nobody outside the family actually knew anything. However, quiet gave room for conjecture to flourish. The ease with which the rumors circulated was more painful than the rumors themselves. Stranger-made stories started to feel more weighty than truth. Nevertheless, the pair decided not to reply. They thought that battling rumors would only prolong their lives. There was a price for this choice. When the truth is silent, misunderstandings frequently seem louder than the truth. Furthermore, it gets harder to ignore the emotional effects of being misrepresented over time. Why did they decide to remain silent for so long? Silence was never a sign of weakness for Ernie Haase and his spouse. It was a decision based on conviction. They believed that their marriage, their lives, and their beliefs could endure without the support of the general public. It would have required inviting strangers into areas that were never intended for public use in order to respond to every rumor. There was a more profound explanation as well. Both thought that when given enough time, truth has a way of standing on its own. They had witnessed how swiftly public opinion shifts, how today's indignation turns into tomorrow's forgotten headline. They would have been drawn into a cycle they never wanted to be a part of if they had engaged with rumors. However, there is emotional weight associated with silence. It's difficult to watch people rewrite your experience, speak for you, and assume you're in pain. Ernie's wife kept this to herself for years. She shielded herself from the loudness and stood by her husband. Nevertheless, the outside voices grew louder the longer the silence persisted. After a while, the quiet became heavy instead of serene. Not because the rumors were accurate, but rather because they were diverting attention from important issues. At that point, she understood that speaking was more about clarity than defense. Why she chose to speak. The turning point. Neither pressure nor rage led to the decision to speak. It was the result of introspection. Life appears different at 61. Priorities shift. Things that were once simple to disregard start to seem important to deal with. Not for the general public, but for peace. The wife of Ernie Haase came to the realization that the truth could no longer be protected by quiet. Rather, it was letting lies spread unchecked. She didn't want attention or compassion. Balance was what she desired. An opportunity to kindly clear up any misunderstandings. This moment wasn't organized around headlines or media cycles. After lengthy discussions and introspection, it arrived softly. She knew that if she spoke up, not everyone would be silenced, but her voice would be able to coexist with the commotion. Her objective was straightforward: to replace rumor with truth and confusion with serenity. Furthermore, she didn't use dramatic language when she did speak. They were steadfast, considerate, and incredibly human. The reality of the rumors: Ernie Haase's wife did not make a list of charges or assign blame when she responded to the rumors. Rather, she concentrated on what was truly important: their shared existence. She clarified that marriage is not always simple, particularly when it coexists with ministry. It calls for tolerance, room, and ongoing comprehension. She admitted that there were times when she felt distant, not emotionally, but emotionally and physically worn out from years of responsibility and travel. These were not indications of collapse, but rather typical instances. Like many couples, they dealt with difficulties in private and didn't discuss them in public. No secret scandal existed, no covert separation. There is no spectacular confrontation. What was in place was a genuine union between two individuals who prioritized dedication over performance. Because actual life isn't always flawless from the outside, the rumors spread. She did not portray their relationship as perfect by being truthful. She depicted it as authentic. She also served as a reminder that important truth doesn't have to be spectacular. Life in the public eye, faith, and pressure. There is a certain type of pressure to live a faith-based life in the public view. Spiritual leaders are frequently assumed to be impervious to hardship. However, faith provides the fortitude to confront adversity rather than eliminating it. Public expectations can subtly turn into responsibilities. As Ernie Haase and his spouse discovered, it is assumed that you will smile. Strength is taken for granted. Furthermore, vulnerability is frequently misinterpreted. Instead of becoming less honest, this made people more guarded about their personal lives. For them, faith was never about appearances. It has to do with stamina. They leaned inward rather than outward at times of uncertainty, fatigue, or miscommunication. Explanation was substituted with prayer. Reaction was replaced by reflection. This strategy may not meet the contemporary need for immediate transparency, but it did align with their ideals, and how they handled everything that came after was influenced by that decision. The public's reaction to her work, the public's response to her remarks was divided. But it was more subdued than anticipated. A lot of supporters were relieved. Others acknowledged that the lack of a response led them to believe rumors. Accusations gave way to understanding in the talk. Some critics did not change their minds, demonstrating that some people are more interested in drama than the facts. But she never gave a damn about that. It was her duty to speak truthfully once, not to persuade everyone. Her serene tone was more noticeable to many than the actual topic. There was no guilt, no rage, and no need for pity. Just being clear. Furthermore, clarity itself felt strong in the cacophonous media landscape of today. What this narrative actually teaches us. It's not a gossip story. It's about how quickly presumptions are taken for granted and how readily silence may be misinterpreted. It demonstrates how public figures are frequently asked to provide an explanation of their private lives, even when none is necessary. It also serves as a reminder that there are actual persons behind well-known names. People who, like everyone else, experience emotional weight, weariness, and pressure. The distinction is that strangers watch, judge, and frequently misinterpret their hardships. The wife of Ernie Haase did not speak to protect her reputation. She spoke to keep reality intact. And in doing so, she provided something uncommon, genuine serenity in a noisy environment. A quiet truth in the final reflection. Ultimately, the veracity of the rumors was never startling. It was a human, a lengthy union, a hard existence, a calm strength that preferred to wait rather than react. With the same unwavering presence that characterized his career, 61-year-old Ernie Haase continues his adventure. And next to him is a woman who has always been strong without the spotlight. When her voice was eventually heard, it wasn't a roar. It gave comfort. This tale serves as a reminder that not every stillness conceals a secret. It can conceal dignity at times. Speaking up can sometimes be about reestablishing equilibrium rather than combating rumors.